Hi, my name is Dr. Erika Rodriguez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the postdoctoral fellow in Public Humanities at the University of Maine at Farmington and the assistant director of the New Commons Project. My job is really sort of separated into two parts. The first half is that I do teach 3 classes per academic year, and the second half is organizing public-facing humanities engagement events. I really love all of it. Because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to put out any of the events yet. So this semester, we're just organizing them. Next semester, we are going to be starting to organize events with the community based on texts selected by people at the University of Maine at Farmington, and also just people across Maine with no connection to the university at all, to create a commons for us to talk about. And that includes music, art, literature, and we are working really hard to create events that are going to be accessible during the pandemic and also really engaging and memorable. So that's been my favorite part so far, has been planning out how we're going to make these events available to people who otherwise wouldn't usually be engaging with this kind of academic work in the same way. Honestly, I approached it with a good deal of panic. It was, I mean, everybody knows that the job market is really hard right now. And I don't want to say particularly for people in the humanities because it is hard for everyone, but you do kind of have to be willing to forge your own path if you're in the humanities and you're trying to think flexibly. But once I overcame that initial fear of not knowing what to look for if I wasn't looking for a tenure track position, I started realizing that unbeknownst to us, my university life had actually prepared me for a lot of other opportunities. It was all just in changing my perspective about how I could use those skill sets. And so, for instance, when jobs asked for experience in administrative work, even though I didn't have that kind of experience per se, my involvement in different groups and organizations at the university, like across the university, and my experience teaching, like just thinking the fact that I had 6 years of experience teaching at the university level, that meant that in terms of like real practice skill sets, I knew how to run meetings, I knew how to keep a group organized and focused, I knew how to delegate, right? Like all of these things are skill sets that we're working on throughout our PhD, and we just tend to think of them very narrowly because we're just focused on meeting the next deadline, right? But once you start thinking about job exploration in a broader and more optimistic light, you really do get to see how what you've been doing all along can be put to work in a variety of other venues. I expected that I did want to stay within the university. And so I was looking at the MLA job list and I was looking at HNET mostly. And then within those, I was looking at both faculty positions and staff positions. And this is something that made me very aware of how short-sighted I was being, was that when I envisioned my life in academia, I only ever thought of myself as faculty in the future. But what I enjoy about being an educator are also things that can sort of be expressed in a lot of other positions. And so when I started thinking about it like that, I started applying to faculty positions, but also to positions that were more public facing. So if there was any sort of like museum or humanities center attached to a university, that was something that I would really prioritize. And in the cover letter, I would try to emphasize that, the aspects of my career and my interests that I thought were going to make me stand out from people who were applying to this as a second choice, because for me, it really wasn't. It was just a new choice. And the third thing that I thought could really be enriching and satisfying to me was academic success positions. So I started looking for work with TRIO programs in McNair, Johnson Scholars, because I was a McNair student, right? I was in a TRIO program myself, and so I really did get to see that TRIO works, and I wanted to have an opportunity to engage and give back in that way. And so these are kind of the three things that I started to focus on, even within that sort of like limited academic search engine kind of approach. And so even in that, there was a lot of variety and diversity. One thing that I would want people to know about this kind of exploration is that folks are really open to informational interviews. People are very willing to engage with you, especially if you're willing to volunteer in some capacity with them, to demonstrate that you have an investment, that you are interested in exploring more, and that you're willing to give up part of your time for it. And so what made me a standout candidate for the position that I'm currently in were, first of all, my volunteer work with some nonprofits invested in racial equity in St. Louis, and also my internships with a museum, the Mildred Lane Kemper Art Museum, and with the nonprofit We Power in St. Louis. And my new supervisors told me as much, that these were the reasons that I was really selected for this position. And so in my approach to exploring what kinds of things might make me happy in the long run, I really think that volunteering and interning were crucial to finding out what's important to me, and also to help me stand out as a candidate, even within academic positions. And so my advice would be to intern and volunteer. My own strategy is that I only volunteer for free when it's sort of helping people up, when I am in a position of privilege relative to the people that I'm volunteering with. And otherwise, I do want to be compensated for my work. I think that especially if you're coming from a working class background, and if you're a person of color, these are really important things to keep in mind. But that these can be useful tools for finding out what's out there. And then another piece of advice would be that you don't have to know everything about your position going into it, which maybe sounds counterintuitive, right? Because you want to show up and be like, yes, I am here to fill this gap and to satisfy this need within the institution. But really, you can do a lot of learning as you go.